Yikes! It was not a good week to be working at GM. Welcome to the Netma Show, where we discuss news and current events and analyze how those things impact your everyday life. My name is Kellen, and I've got 15,000 things on my mind this week, and that are the 15,000 GM workers that learned that they're going to lose their jobs coming up in 2019, and that's as GM CEO Mary Barra announced that they were going to cut 15% of their American workforce, including shrinking their executive ranks by 25%. GM says that this decision was in response to changing American consumer preferences as more people drift towards pickup trucks and SUVs and away from small compact cars and mid-size sedans. And that means that GM is going to close 5 factories. There are 2 in Michigan that will close. There is 1 in Lordstown, Ohio that's going to close, 1 in Ontario, Canada, as well as 1 in Baltimore. And that's just devastating to those that work at GM, but also those that work at companies that supply those factories with parts. That means bumpers, that means nuts and bolts, all kinds of things. And those companies will also feel the pinch, the punch of losing a ginormous portion of their business. And, as upset as I was, there was also someone else that was pretty ticked off about this too, and that was President Donald Trump. He criticized GM for this decision, and he is actually exploring the idea of introducing a 25% tariff on vehicles that are imported to the U.S. from the likes of Europe and Japan, as well as ending subsidies given to GM or its customers for the purchase of electric vehicles. So on the topic of those subsidies, there is a $7,500 tax credit available to those that purchase electric vehicles such as the Chevy Volt. And if GM is selling a vehicle for about $37,500, after the tax credit, your cost is $30,000. And so that helps GM sell more of those vehicles. Now on the flip side, I think that there could be a consequence of getting rid of that. If GM is saying that we're selling fewer sedans and compact cars, that's why we're closing 5 factories, well, it may be counterintuitive to then remove tax credits that help GM sell those cars. But on the surface level, hell yeah, I can get behind a president that's saying, you know what, we're going to be tough on billion-dollar businesses that just think it's okay to then cut their workforce and lay off 15,000 people, right? And not to mention, when GM did this, their stock price increased as investors were pretty pumped that the company was going to save money. And in fact, by 2020, GM estimates that this will improve their cash flow by $6 billion. So, I can see where the average American worker will be kind of ticked off, because this brings up the thought of, that working class versus the elites, as it seems like the working class, they continue to take it on the chin, but these elites, the company executives and the big time shareholders, they continue to make money, while those that go into the factories every single day to support their families, they're losing their jobs. So my heart definitely goes out to them. And, GM says that this is a move to help set themselves up for success in the future, to make sure that they are well prepared and that they're a lean, mean operating machine. Because if you remember back in 2008 and 2009 during the U.S. recession, GM had to take tens of billions of dollars in bailout money to keep their operation afloat. So I can understand where they're coming from to make sure that they are going to be supportive of the entire company for decades to come. You don't want another recession to happen and then GM is on the brink of going out of business. I get that. I understand making sure that you're setting yourself up, the company up for success in the future. And I understand that the company is investing those billions of dollars in savings into things that sell well. So for example, it's pickup trucks, it's SUVs, and electric and autonomous driving vehicles. And in fact, 75% of GM sales were SUVs and crossovers. So that's where the business is going. And as well as more and more people have an interest in electric vehicles and driverless cars as well. That may be the wave of the future. But if I dig a little deeper and think, if I were one of those GM employees, what would I do? And perhaps right now would be the best chance for them to make a change. So while the economy is strong, while the unemployment rate is extremely low, there's a better chance of them being able to find employment elsewhere or be able to gain the knowledge and skills to transition into another role rather than waiting until 2020, for example, when another recession rolls around and then boom, all of a sudden no one knows how they're going to find work because no one's hiring. So this may be the best time to make this change rather than later when it may hurt even more. So that might be the only solace. And when I think about Trump and his actions, I understand them. I do think there is a true desire to improve the conditions and experience of blue-collar workers in the United States. But also, when you think about the places where these factories are being closed, Ohio and Michigan particularly, these were states that went red for Donald Trump. Ohio typically is a battleground state. People are always watching CNN, waiting to see how Ohio is going to flip. Versus Michigan was typically blue, but it went red for Donald Trump. So this may be a case where Trump is wanting to change his perception to appear to be tough on companies that choose profit over people so that he may earn the loyalty of those voters in those states. So I think that his decision making is a bit more complex and there's a lot of moving pieces that go into it. On the surface, I do think it was a popular thing to do to come after GM, but at the same time, I do wonder if increased tariffs or the removal of a tax credit will be perceived as an action to help American workers, or will it be perceived more as a punishment to GM? There are pros and cons to both sides, but we'll only find that out in the future. But I really want to know what you think about this. Do you think that GM is doing a good thing about making moves to set itself up for success in the future? Or is this a bad thing where it just doesn't care about its people? It's putting profits above people. So let me know what you think down in the comments. I'm eager to hear what you've got to say. That's all I've got for you this week. And until later, peace.